Collabspaces are the ideal way to share and collaborate on documents stored in NetDocs with people that are outside of your company, whether they're a client or some other third party that you need to share something with. Collabspaces also allow you to keep all of the documents you need to share securely inside NetDocs without being forced to first download and copy the documents to a different platform or to attach those documents to an email. Additionally, Collabspaces allow you to share documents in a way that's consistent with how you already work and organize your content, which is all inside the workspace and the matter inside of NetDocs. To share documents, you first need to create a new Collabspace in a workspace where your documents are already stored. Then you would add documents to the Collabspace and then share that Collabspace with external users who need the access. So you'll notice here on this particular workspace, there is a section here for Collabspaces. We're going to go there. And under Collabspaces, we have the ability to add one. So we'll click on the button here for Add Collabspace. We will give the Collabspace a name. You can also add an additional description if you like, and then we will click the button for OK. Now, as part of this creation process, it'll always pop up a little note explaining what has to be done and what is going to happen when you click OK. Here it's explaining that we're going to create internal users or external users to have access to this and the rights that they're going to have for the space. Part of the Collabspace is all about the security of it as well. Now, out of the gate, normally whatever has the default cabinet access for the workspace that you're in, that's going to be automatically granted access at the default level. So you don't have to do anything different unless you want to remove that access and only add certain people to have access to this Collabspace in the company. The person who creates the Collabspace is going to automatically be added with administrator access, as you can see here with the VESA permissions. Now, if you want to add external users, the best practice is to create a group specifically for this Collabspace and then add those external users to that group. That way, in the future, it makes it very easy to be able to update the security by just adding or removing people from that group, and you won't have to mess with the security of the individual documents or the Collabspace as a result. So you'll see right down here at the bottom, there's a button for Create Collabspace Group. We'll click on that. We're going to go ahead and give it a name. As a best practice, I like to recommend that you give the group name, the name of the Collabspace, and then the word Collabspace at the end so that it easily identifies it as being a security group for that specific purpose. Now, once we've given it a name, just underneath this is where we would create or add the users. Now, it's a little tricky on how this works because you may look at this and go, well, where do I add a new user? But all you have to do is where it says search for internal users is once you click inside of this, it would immediately give you options for adding a new user or picking from an existing user externally that's already in the system. In this case, I've already added my account already to an existing Collabspace in the system, so I don't need to type in the name or email address of who I'm going to send it to. But if I did want to use a different user or group, I would simply type in the name and the address of what it was going to be. Once I have that, there would be a button here for add, and it would create a membership for that particular email address that we're going to use. But again, since I already have one that's in the system for myself, I'll just pick that from the list. Once I've done that, I want to now go ahead and create group. I want to press the button down here in the bottom right. It's going to create that group and then add me to that group and add the group to having access to the Collabspace. Now, once you do this, the default permission it's going to provide is V for view only. That means that they can view the contents of the collab space, but they do not have the rights to be able to edit the files. So they could view, meaning they could look at or download the files, but they cannot edit. Edit meaning that they wouldn't be able to modify files or upload or replace files. Now, Collabspaces can be used for dual purpose. You could use Collabspaces for providing files to somebody, which in that case, the V rights would work just fine. Or if you were looking for the ability for them to be able to upload files to you, then you would want to change those permissions from V to VE, which would be view and edit, meaning that not only could they view files and download them from here, but they could also edit or upload files or modify files in the collab space as well. Once this is done, you will notice that in the bottom left-hand corner, it says apply access list to all documents and subfolders in this collab space. Well, being that there are no subfolders and additional documents here, that's not going to make a big difference. But if there were, you would want to check that so that it would apply these permissions to everything that was already there, if for some reason you were modifying the permissions after the fact. I'm going to go ahead and check it. It's not really going to make any difference right now, but I wanted to explain what that looks like. We'll go ahead and choose apply, and it's going to confirm that what we want to do and that we're going to apply the permissions to existing files and folders. And then it's going to create the space and take us into it. Now, just to show you what this looks like, I want to go up here to the little breadcrumb or path we have and go back a level. And then I'll go back to Collabspaces and you'll see the collab space that we've created here. And then I will click on that and we're here. This is it. Now, of course, if you need to modify the permissions for the collab space or the name of it, you can always drop down the properties for the collab space from the drop down arrow and choose modify access. Here, this will look very familiar to you. You'll notice the little eye with the circle for the information window. If you click on that, for example, Jones trial collab space, if I click on that, it's going to let you know who is part of that particular security group so you know who is what and what they have access to. I'll click cancel to go back. So obviously, if you needed to change any permissions or if you needed to add somebody, an external user to have access to this, you could click on the little eye right here, and then you could click in the search. Obviously, when you do that, as before, create new user shows up, and you could add a new user or select one that was already in the system. We'll cancel out of that. And we'll cancel from the permissions. So that's how you can create a collab space. Now, the next part comes with, well, how do I get files into the collab space? Well, there's two ways that you can do that. One is you can move files from your client and Matter into the collab space, or you can copy them into the collab space. The difference is that moving them is going to remove them from the primary area and documents in NetDocuments that all your internal users have and put it into the collab space versus a copy, meaning that it would retain these here and put a copy of those files into the collab space. My IT background always says it's a little bit safer to copy things than it is to move, just in case you ever need to fall back on the original, or if you need to get rid of the collab space and you don't need to retain anything, you don't have to worry about it being the only copy of something. Now, there's pros and cons to that. One is if you do copies, then obviously you're going to have copies of things. And if you do need to get them out of the collab space and back into the normal NetDocs area, you would either have to save them as versions or additional copies of the file. If you move the files and then you were to modify or make changes to them, and then you move them back, there's no worry about, well, do I need to make them as new versions or am I going to have extra copies? So there's pros and cons to that. Myself, I tend to fall back onto the copy method. So the way that works is I would come in here and select the documents that I want to copy into that particular collab space. So I'll select a couple documents here. We'll go to the More command and we're going to choose Move or Copy. When I do that, I'll go up to the client and Matter where the collab space is associated. And when I expand the one here for this particular client matter, you'll see Jones trial documents. I'll click on that just one time, and I want to choose the button for copy. This will make a copy of those files into the Collabspace. Now, when you do this, just like any files anywhere else, when you're copying something somewhere, you have to profile the files. So in this case, it's going to come up with the client matter, but I would have to select the doc type and subtype if you're using those of how you want to do that. In this case, I know that these are agreements, so I'll choose agreement for the doc type, and then I will choose update, and it'll copy them over there. So now, if I go back to the client matter and to the Collabspace, and I open that up, I will see my two files listed there. Now, a Collabspace is like any other shared file or folder that you would have if you had created it in OneDrive, Dropbox, or any other resource that you're familiar with. What do I mean by that? That means that you have the ability to organize things as you would on any other file system. And this can be helpful when working with external users that are not accustomed to a document management system, but more accustomed to saving files on their computer. So you'll notice when you go up to Jones trial documents, one of the options you have is add folder. So I could come in here and I could create files or a folder for a specific purpose. So just as an example, to make this easier on my client, I may make a folder for agreements. And then now I have a folder for that. Now these two files I have here, I would want to move them in here. And so you could create a folder structure here. Again, don't get too complex or carried away with it, because when you're done, you would have to move the files yourself. And being that most of our document management systems, we don't use folders, you don't want to get carried away with it. But with regards to your external user and the client that you may be working with, it may be helpful to be able to segregate your documents into folders to make it easier for them to peruse through them. Or the other option is also in securing them. Let me go ahead and move these two documents first. So I'll choose Move Copy, I'll choose Jones Trial, and I'll choose the Agreements folder, and we're going to move the files to that location. There we go. So now if we go under Agreements, we'll click on that folder, and we'll see the two files are in here. Now, where I talked about security, obviously there's security for the entire Collabspace. So let's say that you have multiple people that would be looking at or adding files into this collaborative space. However, you may say maybe you have a particular folder that you create that you don't want them to be able to edit the files, or you do want them to edit. It could be vice versa. So for agreements, let's say that I don't want them to be able to edit these files, but I do want them to look at and be able to download. So if I drop down the permissions here or properties for this specific folder, and we go to Modify Access, you'll see that it has the Jones Trial Collabspace, and it has absorbed the VE control or security for this. I can very simply, just for this folder, change this to View Only, and I could choose Apply, and I will do here for Change Access List for each item filed in this folder. That's very important to do, otherwise you'd have to do all the individual files too. We'll choose Apply. Now, what that means is in the general Collabspace, they would be able to view and edit any of the files here. But in the Agreements folder, they will only be able to view these files. They will not be able to edit or upload things into this area. And because of the way we did the permissions, where we said apply this to any of the files, it would automatically do it for the folder and the files that are here. And then anything that you add to this folder from this point forward would absorb those permissions automatically. So that is how you create a Collabspace and how you can change the permissions both for the entire space in general and for a specific file or folder within that Collabspace if you need to, and how to move or copy files around into it or within it. Now, whenever you do add a person or persons to a collaborative space, they will get a welcome email. So just to give you an example of what that looks like, We're going to go back to the Collabspace, and I'm going to choose Modify Access, and I'm going to add another email address. Just pretend like we're adding someone else to this. So I'll type in the person's email address. I would choose Create New User. Here I could fill out their name, organization, phone number, and you'll see that there is a Send Welcome Mail right here. If you choose this, then what will happen as soon as you add them is they will get an email message with a welcome link to this specific Collabspace. Now, as a best practice, I always recommend that you let the person know before you do this. Otherwise, they may see this as a phishing email or a spam type of thing, which is rightly so. There's a zero trust there because they weren't expecting it. So let them know they're going to be receiving this. That way, they'll know to look for it, or if it gets caught in their spam filter, they'll know that it's safe and they'll release it and be able to go into it. Once they get the welcome email and they click on the link, it'll ask that user to set up a password so they can access this. And then the beauty of all of that is once they're in the system, everything like your normal NetDocuments is tracked. So you will have audit history of everything that happens within the Collabspace for both internal and your external users, as far as what they modify, what they look at, what they download, what they upload, just like you would for any other NetDocuments file, including the Collabspace in general. Now, once you're done with the Collabspace and you no longer need things, I particularly like to move the files out manually the way I want to and where I want them to go. So for example, these agreements right here, I would go into this folder and then I would select the files that I would like to move. So I would select these two files and then I would come over here to More. I would do Move or Copy. And then I would choose where they're going to go. So since these are agreements, I would go outside of the normal Collabspace and back up to agreements up here. And I would choose to move the files out of the Collabspace and back into my normal NetDocuments repository for this client matter. I would move them out of here and that would keep them in that location. So that's how I like to manage that. Now, the reason I like to do it that way is because whenever I go to delete the Collabspace when I'm done with it, I don't have to worry about any of the files that are in there. Now, you'll notice that when you do go to delete a Collabspace, so under the properties and we go to delete, it's going to ask you what you want to do. So you have delete the documents in the marked container, which if you've already moved everything out, perfectly fine. You don't have to worry about it. Or you have what's called the unfile the documents. Now, unfiling basically means it's going to drop all these files into NetDocuments, into this particular client matter outside of the Collabspace. If they're not profiled correctly, then they're going to be kind of profiled to the Collabspace, I'm sorry, to the client matter without any of the extra details. So it might be a little hard to find them if you don't know where they are or they weren't profiled correctly. So that's how I like to handle that, is I like to move them ahead of time so that when I'm done, I can just say, you know what? Anything that's left in there, any folders or any files, I've already moved out what I want to keep, and then I can delete them out. You have to confirm by clicking or typing in delete and then clicking OK. This will now set this up to be deleted, and it's going to take out the whole thing, and you're all done. So that's Collabspaces, a very easy way within the NetDocuments architecture to be able to share files and also receive files externally with users, and they don't have to have a NetDocuments license for you to easily collaborate with one another.